They knew. They saw the warning signs, they read the reports, they heard the voices, and they did nothing. Not because they didn't care, not because they didn't understand, but because stopping it would cost too much. Imagine this. You are sitting at your desk. You receive a document. It has one word stamped across the top in red ink. Confidential. Inside is a prediction, not a guess, not a theory, a model, a projection, a chain of events that leads to one inevitable outcome. A tragedy. Hundreds of lives lost, families destroyed. A moment that will change history. And you have a choice. You can speak, or you can stay silent. Tonight, you will hear a story about people who made that choice. A story about warnings that were buried, about voices that were ignored, about a truth that was locked away while the clock kept ticking. This is not a story about monsters. It's about normal people who looked away. And what happened next? The first warning didn't arrive as a scream. It arrived as a spreadsheet. A quiet email, sent at 3:17 a.m. from an analyst no one important knew. Her name was Emily Carter. She worked in a windowless office inside a private research firm that contracted for government agencies. Her job was simple: run simulations, flag anomalies, send reports. She wasn't famous. She wasn't powerful. She didn't make decisions. She only saw patterns. And one night, she saw a pattern that terrified her. Her model was built to detect cascading risks, how small failures compound into catastrophic ones. Infrastructure, supply chains, emergency response systems. Most days, the models showed nothing, minor risks, acceptable losses. But that night, the output was different. A bright red spike, a convergence of failures, all aligning on one date, one city, one moment. Emily thought it was a glitch. She reran the model. Same result. She changed the parameters. Same result. She ran it backward, forward, sideways. Same result. A collapse of emergency services. Power grid instability. Communication failures. Delayed medical response. A scenario that would turn a manageable incident into a disaster. And the projected death toll was not small. It was enormous. She sat frozen in her chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't a theoretical exercise. This was a warning. Emily did what she was trained to do. She escalated, first to her supervisor, then to the department head, then to a risk committee. Every step took time. Meetings were scheduled, documents were formatted, language was softened. The word catastrophic was replaced with high impact. The word deaths became negative outcomes. By the time it reached the top, the warning no longer sounded urgent. It sounded inconvenient. The first person who said no didn't raise their voice. They smiled. They leaned back in their chair and said, "This model is interesting, but it's speculative." Speculative. That word killed more warnings than any villain ever could. Because speculative means not proven, not guaranteed, not actionable, and most importantly, not worth changing plans for. The second no came wrapped in politeness, a calendar invite, a 30-minute call, a group of people with calm voices and careful language. They didn't say she was wrong. They said the timing was wrong. They said the data needed further validation. They said the implications were complex. They said they needed to avoid unnecessary panic. Panic. That word had power. It made caution sound responsible. It made silence sound mature. It made delay sound wise. One man cleared his throat and said, "If we act on this and it turns out to be nothing, the reputational damage could be severe." Another added, "Markets react to fear faster than they react to truth." A woman near the end of the table said softly, "We need to be careful not to overreact to a model." Emily listened. She watched them. They weren't evil. They weren't cruel. They were tired professionals who had learned that the safest decision is usually the one that changes nothing. So they postponed. They created a subcommittee. They scheduled a follow-up. They thanked Emily for her diligence. And then they closed the file. Emily left the building that night with a strange feeling in her chest. Not anger, not fear. A hollow weight. She had done what she was supposed to do. She had followed protocol. She had escalated through the proper channels. And still, nothing had changed. The city was still unprepared. The systems were still fragile. The timeline was still moving forward. She lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the meeting in her head. Not what they said, but what they didn't say. No one said we should warn someone. No one said we should prepare emergency services. No one said we should treat this as real until proven otherwise. They treated it as false until proven real. And that difference mattered. Time is a strange thing in institutions. It moves slowly when decisions are needed. It moves instantly when consequences arrive. Emily watched the date on the report approach. She checked news feeds. She watched infrastructure reports. She monitored minor failures accumulating like hairline cracks in glass. A substation outage here, a staffing shortage there, a delayed shipment, a postponed maintenance. Small things, normal things, but together they matched the model perfectly. Emily tried again. She sent another email. Shorter this time, stronger. She used words she knew would trigger attention. Unacceptable risk, high likelihood, severe human cost. She sent it to people above her, and people beside her, and people she barely knew. Some replied politely, some didn't reply at all. One message came back with a single sentence. Noted. Noted. As if she had pointed out a typo. Not a warning, not a fire, not a ticking clock, just a note. A month later, an envelope arrived at a journalist's desk. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. On it were internal emails, risk assessments, early warnings, projections, including a document titled Probability of Mass Casualty Event, with a date, with a time, with names. The truth was no longer theoretical. It was documented. The journalist stared at the screen in silence, not because he was shocked, but because he recognized the pattern. He had seen it before. Warnings buried, language softened, responsibility dissolved. He spent 2 days verifying the files, cross-checking timestamps, confirming servers, matching metadata. Everything was real. On the third day, the story went live. Not as an accusation, but as a question. What did they know? And when did they know it? The headline spread faster than the article. Social media exploded. Television followed. Radio followed. By nightfall, the entire country was watching. Families recognized their own experiences in the details. Doctors saw the delays they had lived through. Emergency workers saw the gaps they had tried to fill. The silence was breaking. Not violently, but steadily. Institutions responded with statements. Carefully worded, legally reviewed. They denied intent. They denied negligence. They denied responsibility. They expressed sympathy. They promised internal reviews. They promised transparency. But they did not admit fault. They did not name names. They did not change anything yet. Protests began. Small at first. A few dozen people with signs, then hundreds, then thousands. Not because people suddenly became angry, but because they finally felt seen. The truth had a strange effect. It didn't bring peace. It brought clarity. And clarity is heavy. It forces choice, to accept or to demand more. And once people demand more, systems become uncomfortable. The lawsuits came next. Not one, not 10, hundreds. Families of victims, survivors with permanent injuries, doctors who had lost patients, emergency workers who had been exposed. They filled the courts. They filled inboxes. They filled conference rooms. The legal response was immediate. Not to find the truth, but to contain it. Lawyers appeared with binders thicker than any report. They questioned causation. They questioned jurisdiction. They questioned standing. They questioned everything except the warning. They asked whether the deaths could be linked directly, whether alternative explanations existed, whether coincidence could not be ruled out. They asked until people grew tired of answering. Because fatigue is a powerful defense. Time passed. Bills arrived. Medical costs grew. People needed money. Settlements were offered. not as admissions of guilt, as gestures, compassion without responsibility, money without apology. Some families accepted. They needed care. They needed to survive. Others refused. They wanted names. They wanted accountability. They wanted someone to say, "We did this." One woman stood in court holding a photograph of her son. She asked one question: "If you knew, why didn't you stop it?" No one answered her. The judge looked down. The lawyers looked at their notes. The room stayed quiet. Because silence is safe and truth is not. Years passed. The city changed. New paint on old walls, new signs on old buildings, new families in old homes. To someone arriving later, nothing looked wrong. But for those who remembered, everything felt different. Absence has a shape. It sits at empty tables. It leaves space in photographs. It fills rooms even when nothing is there. Some of the children who survived grew up with problems no one could fully explain. Breathing difficulties, chronic pain, neurological disorders, learning delays. Doctors wrote reports. Scientists published studies. But causation was difficult. Funding disappeared. Interest faded. And without official recognition, suffering becomes private. And private suffering is invisible. Families met once a year. Not to protest, not for cameras. To remember. They read names. They shared stories. They told the world quietly what institutions would not say loudly. Emily left government work. She taught now. She taught students how models fail, how systems hide risk, how language reshapes danger. She didn't tell them about the city, not directly. She let them discover the pattern themselves, because a lesson found is stronger than a lesson given. The system adjusted its vocabulary, not its behavior. New terms replaced old ones. New policies replaced old policies. But the incentives stayed the same. Avoid panic. Avoid liability. Avoid blame. Protect the institution at all costs. So here is the question this story leaves behind. If a tragedy is predicted, if it is preventable, if the warning is ignored, is it still a tragedy? Or is it something else, something quieter, something colder, something closer to a decision than an accident? Disasters do not begin with explosions. They begin with silence. A meeting that ends with no action. A report that is marked reviewed. A warning that is labeled speculative. A decision to wait. A decision to delay. A decision to do nothing. Because doing nothing feels safe. It feels professional. It feels careful. It feels responsible. Until the consequences arrive. And by then, it is always too late. This story is not about one city. It is about every system that knows something is wrong and waits. It is about every warning that arrives too early to feel urgent and too late to be useful. It is about the space between knowledge and action. That space is where people disappear. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Silence is not empty. Silence is a choice, and every choice leaves a mark. Years later, journalists still requested the same documents. They were always told the same thing. The files were incomplete. The records were archived. The data was lost. The system had changed. Every answer sounded reasonable. Every answer avoided the center. Because the center was not a technical failure. It was a human one. People had been in the room. People had read the report. People had made the choice. But systems are designed to make people disappear. Responsibilities are distributed. Decisions are layered. Outcomes are shared. So no one feels fully responsible. A little fault here. A little delay there. A small adjustment. A soft word. And suddenly no one did it. Yet it still happened. That is how modern harm works. It does not come from a single villain. It comes from alignment. Alignment of incentives. Alignment of fear. Alignment of comfort. The same small decision made by many people becomes something massive, something unstoppable, something deadly. Not because anyone wanted it, but because no one stopped it. And stopping something means becoming visible. It means being the one who says no, the one who delays the rollout, the one who asks for review, the one who causes discomfort. and discomfort is punished faster than silence. There is a strange moment after every disaster. A pause. When the world knows something is wrong, but does not yet know what to do with it. That pause is where narratives are born. Explanations, framing, language. Is it an accident, a tragedy, a failure, a coincidence, a lesson? The words chosen in that moment decide what will change, or what will not. In this story, the word chosen was tragedy, because tragedy suggests fate. It suggests inevitability. It suggests sadness without blame. But this was not fate. It was architecture. It was designed not to kill, but to protect. To protect budgets, to protect timelines, to protect careers, to protect institutions. And in protecting those things, it failed to protect people. People are always the last layer. They are what systems assume will adapt, will cope, will survive, until they don't. And when they don't, the system calls it collateral, a side effect, a margin, a statistic, never a face, never a name, never a child, never a parent, just a number that fits into a chart. There is no dramatic ending to this story, no courtroom confession, no villain unmasked, no final justice. There is only continuation. The system still exists, the incentives still exist, the silence still exists. And somewhere right now, a report is being written, a warning, a projection, a model. Someone is staring at a screen. Someone feels that same weight in their chest, that sense that something is wrong. And they will decide what to do next. They will choose whether to speak, or to wait, or to soften language, or to trust that it will probably be fine. And the world will move forward based on that choice, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. In meeting rooms, in inboxes, in spreadsheets, in calendars, where the future is decided without anyone noticing, until it arrives. And when it does, people will ask again, how could this happen? And the answer will be the same. It didn't happen. It was allowed. People often ask what the lesson is. They want something simple, something useful, something that fits on a poster or into a speech. But the truth is not simple. The truth is uncomfortable. The lesson is that no system is neutral. Every system is built around values. What it protects, what it optimizes, what it sacrifices. And most systems are not built to protect people. They are built to protect stability. Stability of markets, stability of institutions, stability of power. People are expected to adapt to stability, even when stability hurts them, even when stability costs them their health, their homes, their loved ones. We call it progress. We call it efficiency. We call it necessary. But necessary for whom? That is the question we rarely ask, because asking it shifts responsibility. And responsibility is heavy. It demands action. It demands courage. It demands that someone becomes the obstacle. The person who says, stop. The person who slows things down. The person who asks for more time. And time is always framed as the enemy, because time delays profit. Time delays deployment. Time delays success. But time is also what saves lives. And when time is denied, life is denied with it. The world will not change because of one story. But stories change people. They change what we notice. They change what we tolerate. They change what we question. And maybe that is enough. Maybe the only way systems change is when enough individuals refuse to be silent. Not loudly, not violently, but consistently. By asking, by questioning, by slowing things down, by refusing to accept that nothing can be done. Because something can always be done, even if it is only to say, this is wrong, and to not look away. People often ask what the lesson is. They want something simple, something useful, something that fits on a poster or into a speech. But the truth is not simple. The truth is uncomfortable. The lesson is that no system is neutral. Every system is built around values, what it protects, what it optimizes, what it sacrifices. And most systems are not built to protect people. They are built to protect stability, stability of markets, stability of institutions, stability of power. People are expected to adapt to stability, even when stability hurts them, even when stability costs them their health, their homes, their loved ones. We call it progress. We call it efficiency. We call it necessary. But necessary for whom? That is the question we rarely ask, because asking it shifts responsibility, and responsibility is heavy. It demands action. It demands courage. It demands that someone becomes the obstacle. The person who says stop. The person who slows things down. The person who asks for more time. And time is always framed as the enemy, because time delays profit. Time delays deployment. Time delays success. But time is also what saves lives. And when time is denied, life is denied with it. The world will not change because of one story. But stories change people. They change what we notice. They change what we tolerate. They change what we question. And maybe that is enough. Maybe the only way systems change is when enough individuals refuse to be silent. Not loudly, not violently, but consistently. By asking, by questioning, by slowing things down, by refusing to accept that nothing can be done, because something can always be done, even if it is only to say this is wrong and to not look away.